Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the BCA-STAS-SLECMA COVID Safe Restart webinar, working together towards COVID Safe and Restart Ready. My name is Kian Wei from BCA Academy. We are very grateful to have the Specialist Trade Alliance of Singapore, STAS, and the Singapore Lift and Escalator Contractors and Manufacturers Association, SLECMA, joining us together to organize this live webinar. As construction activities gradually resume, we would like to welcome you to this platform to engage to develop the contractors on the COVID-safe requirements prior to restart works, to facilitate the restarting process as well as to receive ground-up feedback on the safe restart process. We hope to share with you on the key policy considerations and engage you on how we could best facilitate a safe restart for our sector while ensuring the safety of the greater community. As such, this platform is not intended to discuss questions regarding individual project status or allocated phase of restart. Instead, we encourage you to discuss the key areas where we could work together more closely across agencies and across the entire construction value chain to facilitate a smoother restart for our sector. We thank you for your understanding. Before we start, please note that as participants, you are on mute settings. Should you have any questions about discussion topics, you may do so by clicking the Q&A button on your screen to type in your queries. When we get to the Q&A session at the end of this webinar, we will also be activating the raise hand function to take live questions from the audience. Should you wish to ask a question verbally at a time, do click on the raise hand icon. Do also note that when the session ends, you will be directed to access the evaluation form after you have exited the webinar. Once submitted, you will be able to download the speaker's presentation materials. Today, we are pleased to have Mr. Chin Chi Leong, Deputy CEO, Building Control, Commissioner of Buildings, BCA, to chair this session. Together with him, we have Mr. Thomas Ang Keng Boon, President of the Specialist Trade Alliance of Singapore, STAS, Mr. Nelson T. Kok Luan, Honorary President, the Specialist Trade Alliance of Singapore, STAS, Mr. James Lee, President, Singapore Lift and Escalator Contractors and Manufacturers Association, SLECMA, Engineer Grace Mui, Center Director, IBSG, Group Director, Manpower Strategy and Planning, BCA, and lastly, Mr. Teo Ohai, Group Director, Electrical and Mechanical Engineering, BCA. Without further ado, let's invite our webinar chairperson, Mr. Chin Chi Leong, to deliver his welcome remarks. Mr. Chin, please.
Thank you, Ken Wei. Good afternoon, everybody. I think this is a healthy start. I think we've almost got 1,300 participants. Today's focus, or at least this webinar's focus, is really on the specialist trade firms. We've had a series of webinars ongoing with different sectors of our construction industry. We've been partnering our different TACs or trade associations and chambers to look at how we can gather each of our sectors together to help and to work with our partners to understand what are your issues on the ground. Later on, we will have a Q&A to discuss this, and we will try to take as many questions as possible, but I noticed that the questions are already streaming in. This morning session had too many questions, and I think the host has, the MC has already told you that we will all compile all your questions and we will give you answers at the end of the seminar or the webinar, but we apologize if we cannot take all your questions. Before we start, I also want to just say that I think you all know the posture and the stance. We do want to start work in the construction industry. We've had a long break, and I think everybody is eager to start. But the concern we must have is that we want to start safely, and therefore it's important that we get ourselves ready. It is no longer business as usual before COVID. With COVID, we have to take care that our workers are not infected when we start work, because we know from experiences from a few sites that once there's a cluster, it spreads very quickly to different dorms and different accommodation, and it gets out of control very quickly. So the important thing for all of us to do is really to make sure that our workers and our sites are clean and prepared before we start. Today, I think you have a series of briefings from my colleagues on really what are the key criteria for requirements before we can approve your project for restart and your work for restart. Some of you in specialist trades have already begun to work, right? We will take your questions later, but I hand it back to the host to start the webinar. Can we?
Thank you, Mr. Chi. Here's an overview of today's program. BCA colleagues will be sharing on the overall plan for a smooth and controlled phase restart of the construction sector, which includes a phased approach and an overview of the respective COVID-safe criteria. First up, we have Ms. Valerie Kong, Senior Manager, Strategic Planning and Transformation Office, who will be sharing on the overview of the COVID-safe restart plan for the construction sector. Over to you, please, Valerie.
Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Valerie from BCA, and I'll be taking you through the COVID-safe restart plan for the construction sector. Hold on now. Okay, a quick recap. So since 7 April, when the circuit breaker period started, almost works were suspended. A small proportion of critical projects and essential works continued work with safe management measures in place. The outbreak caused disruptions for many, and to help our firms tide over, various support measures were introduced to help businesses preserve capacity and capability, and to protect jobs. With the lifting of the circuit breaker starting this week, restarting our economy will be done in a measured and progressive manner, with priority to critical sectors and businesses that operate in settings with lower transmission risks. We have seen in some countries, second waves have emerged, so we have to be cautious and put in place necessary safeguards. Particularly for our sector, we should not rush to open up all activities from day one, as the majority of cases have been foreign workers, and most of them from construction. Instead, our restart must be measured so that we can minimize the reoccurrence of large clusters. And this must be so because of the nature of our sector, with multiple subcontracting and supplier layers, leading to high transmission risk and activities due to close interlinkages and high mixing among workers. Subcontractors typically work on multiple projects, with teams of workers intermingling, and workers from various accommodations actively interact after working hours. Hence, protocols and measures are required to control this risk. So starting from this week on 2nd June, works will resume gradually, adding another 5% of the workforce in the month of June. Importantly, all works must have safe management measures and will require approval before restarting. Workers must also be tested before they start work. And so works will resume in a phased and controlled manner, with the pace of resumption dependent on the readiness of firms to implement the restart criteria and how soon foreign workers residing in dorms can be tested and cleared for work. Taking a phased approach will also allow us to pilot and refine the restart criteria and iron out any issues on the ground so that we can be confident to ramp up in the later phases without risking further outbreaks. So COVID safety is critical to the successful restart of our sector. Restart will be approved by project, and companies involved must meet these 3 rules before they are allowed to resume construction work. The rules are premised on the principle of cohorting workers at the project level and are important as the condition of worksite, accommodation, transportation, and the workers' health status and behavior are crucial towards mitigating any potential infections in the workforce and the community. My colleagues will go through all 3 later on. As mentioned earlier, various support measures have been introduced since the Unity budget in February to help firms tide over the COVID situation. To help offset manpower costs and to protect livelihoods of residents, the Job Support Scheme and the Foreign Worker Levy Waiver and Rebate was introduced for the months of April and May. To help companies' cash flow and business sustainability, the government had allowed for TOL land rental waiver in April and May. Firms could also claim a one-off advance payment in April and May and make fortnightly progress claims for public sector projects. The COVID bill was also passed to remove liability for non-performance of contracts due to COVID-19 for 6 months. And lastly, for development projects, PCP and ABSD remission dates were allowed for a 6-month extension. So following, we have received industry's feedback for additional support to tide through this period, and the government has set aside a substantial budget to help firms in the construction sector as we restart. First, as announced in the DPM's budget speech on 26th of May, the Job Support Scheme and Foreign Worker Levy waiver and rebates will be extended to help firms with manpower costs. Second, to help ease firms' cash flow and ensure business sustainability, the public sector will take the lead to provide support by co-sharing the prolongation cost of contractors for delays arising from the circuit breaker and phased restart and the loss of productivity due to compliance with the restart criteria. This includes operating expenses incurred such as equipment when the projects are halted. Thirdly, we recognize that the restart criteria, while necessary for a safe restart, will be an additional imposition. Hence, we will provide the following measures to defray compliance costs. As part of the safe accommodation requirements, the temporary bridging loan program will help to ease cash flow for building CTQs and TOLQs. For regular swabbing of workers as part of safe workforce requirements, the cost will be borne by the government until August. Beyond that, we will work out the arrangements on how the cost can be shared between parties. And lastly, as part of the safe worksite requirements to engage safe management officers, we will be co-funding 50% of their salary for a 6-month window from September onwards. Importantly, we cannot go back to business as usual pre-COVID. As an industry, we will all need to come together to be able to deal with the COVID war and emerge stronger. Lastly, to adjust to the new operating environment, we are lining up a series of training programs and engagement to prepare everyone for the safe management measures and to keep the industry apprised of policy considerations and requirements. We have started the COVID safe training for workers last week and will be launching a series of further training for safe management officers and safe leaders. Other industry engagement programs will also be launched in the following months to help everyone along the way as we restart. We seek your support to prepare our industry together for the new normal. With that, I end my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. Next, we have Ms. Pang Mei Ting, Senior Manager, Manpower and Strategy Group, who will be presenting the first COVID-safe criteria on the key areas, the roles and responsibilities of employers and employees involved in construction projects and works. Mei Ting, please.
Thank you, Ken. Hi, everyone. Thank you for attending this session. I'm Mei Ting from Manpower Planning Department, BCA. So today I will bring you through the COVID-safe workforce criteria. So just a recap, firms performing construction projects, supply works, construction account works must seek BCA's approval and comply the 3 COVID-safe restart criteria. So COVID-safe workforce is only one of the 3 COVID-safe restart criteria. So COVID-safe workforce sets out 7 key areas, the roles and responsibilities of the employers and employees involved in the construction projects, supply works, renovation works, and construction account works. Firms are required to meet the 7 criteria as listed on the table to restart work. So for further details, you may actually find more details on the website as shown on the slides. So for today's presentation, I will only cover the following 4 key areas. First is on good health status of workers. Second is on the ensure a contactable and traceable workforce and workplace. And third will be the awareness on COVID-19 virus. And lastly will be on the responsibility and care beyond working hours. So for the key area 1 and 2, we'll touch on systems to track health status of workers, including swabbing tests and surveillance. And key area 3 is mainly on workers' training and their responsibility, while key area 7 is actually on employers' roles in managing their workers' movement, including their off days. So on the first key area, good health status of workers, employers should ensure employees undergo regular swab tests and fulfill swab test requirements. So I will provide more details on this item in subsequent slides. So secondly, employers must ensure employees to conduct the regular temperature check twice daily and keep a record for a minimum of 28 days. So as an employee, they must not be on quarantine order or stay home notice. So they must be tested COVID negative at MOH recognized facilities for every 14 days in order to continue work. They should also undergo daily temperature check and inform their supervisor immediately if they are unwell. This is the requirement for the swabbing test for S-Pass and work permit holders. You may find out more from BCA website. Overall, all the work pass holders and S-Pass holders who are working on construction sites are required to undergo swab tests and subjected to regular swab tests, except those who are working on in the office premises and have no interaction with workers who are working on the construction sites. So for those working on renovations, facility management, and lift escalator, as well as maintenance, you may proceed to start work while waiting for the swab test arrangement. And subsequently, these workers are also required to conduct regular swab tests. This slide is actually for the Singapore citizens, permanent residents, as well as employment pass holders who are working on the construction sites. And these people actually will need to undergo swab tests within the first 2 weeks of starting work and subject for regular swab tests as well. So those who are not working on construction sites, including those renovation, facility management, lift and escalators, and etc. So this group of people do not require to undergo any swab tests. So on the second key area, to ensure contactable and traceable workforce and workplace, there are 4 important steps that employers will need to take note of. First is to update your employees' information on MOM website, which is Online Foreign Worker Address Service. In short, is OFWAS, within 7 days prior to the submissions of your application for restart. It's important that all employees to ensure all the information on MOM websites are valid and updated. Subsequently, employers must also update the information on MOM website regularly. And second will be submit all the required workers' information in your application for restart. And third, to ensure workers have a valid device to download Trace Together and SG Work Pass and comply with safe entry requirement. Employers should also monitor the movement of employees in and out of accommodation and keep a record for at least 28 days. So on key area 3, awareness of COVID-19 virus. So it's actually very important for the employers to ensure workers to have attended and passed the mandatory training. This training is called COVID Safe Training for Workers. So employers could register your workers via the BCA Academy website, and the training is a very simple, animated, and pictorial interactive info that to convey the message on how to prevent COVID virus, as well as for workers on maintaining their personal hygiene. So at the end of the training, there's a quiz. So workers are required to pass the quiz in order to consider as completed the training. So employers should also assign a COVID-safe workers leaders. On the ratio of every 20 workers, there should be 1 COVID-safe workers leader. Whenever possible, employers should provide educational materials and conduct briefings to ensure workers are aware of the good practices of personal hygiene and also ways on how to prevent COVID virus at the worksite as well as in their accommodation. So you may refer to MOH or NDA website to develop the preventive measures, materials. And this is the last key area that I would cover for this presentation, which is on responsibilities and care beyond working hours. So to reduce the potential of virus spread in the workers' community, workers should stay in the accommodation after work, including their rest day, to avoid social contact. So employers are also required to stagger their off days throughout the week. So more information will be released by MOM at later stage. So you can refer to MOM website for updates. That's all for my presentation for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mei Ting. Coming up, we have Ms. Vivian Fu, Deputy Director, Strategy Engineering Projects Department, to bring us through some key measures for COVID-safe worksite in fields with tech-enabled audit and inspection. Vivian, please.
Thanks, Kenway. Okay, good afternoon, all of you. I'll bring you through for the COVID-safe worksite document. We all share a common desired outcome, you and me. So which is to ensure that there's no resurgence of infection at construction work sites. So in order to ensure that, we need to build multiple layers of defense at work site. How do we do so? Okay, see, if you look at the chart over here, the builder plays a very important part in ensuring that there are strict SMM measures being implemented at site at all times for workers. The health status of workers should also be monitored closely, and if there are any sick workers, the builder should inform BCA ASAP. All workers should also make use of digital tools, the Safe Entry and Trace Together apps, in order to enable expeditious contact tracing. In addition to that, the next layer would be the appointment of SMO and SDOs by the builder. So these requirements are quite similar to your site safety supervisor, like the WSHO or your site safety supervisor. So how we have done it is like by hierarchy. So you have main SMOs who would be doing out and ensuring that the SDM measures the SMM measures are carried out, while the SDOs will be the ones on ground, ensuring that the workers are individual zones are implementing their safe measures properly. So in addition to that, another additional layer added is that for all projects, we are requiring for this submission, project applications to be submitted to BCA on the 3 COVID-safe criteria. So my colleague have mentioned earlier, and we will look through to ensure that all these are in place before each project is allowed to restart. And once the applications are being approved, if you look at the table here, there is actually what we call the audit and inspection team, who would also inspections on site to ensure that SMM is properly implemented on site. So in the next few slides, if you look at the slides, I have actually provided quite a comprehensive list of guidelines, but I only focus on the key areas here in this webinar. So one thing that I've earlier mentioned is the appointment of SMO and SDOs. So these are the duties of the SMO, and he would have some SDOs to assist him as well. The SMO is to ensure that the builder would implement the monitoring plan, but the SMO is supposed to conduct inspections and checks to ensure that all these are in place. The numbers of SMO and SDO that's required depends on site. So we have also given a table here to explain, like based on the, sorry, I'll go back to the previous slide. Okay, based on the numbers here, for how many number of workers, MO and SDOs to be required. So there's also an illustration here that shows how many SDOs will be required to assist the SMO. next that we would like to focus on is on the contact tracing, which I've mentioned earlier. So the purpose of contact tracing is to ensure that if there is a sick worker or if there is one confirmed case, then this contact tracing will kick in and it will be able to isolate workers that have been in close contact with the workers very quickly. So this ensures that a cluster does not form at the work site. So that's the importance of ensuring that all works are in place to keep a daily health record of all the workers and submit electronically to BCA for our record. On the next part, I'd like to touch on the cohorting. I think that's quite relevant to you all because I think there's quite a bit of questions on this. And what we'd like to mention here is that for the main builder, we're actually requiring for workers working on the same project to be cohorted together in a dedicated accoms. So when we are talking about dedicated accoms, it refers to on-site CTQ as a preferred option because this reduces the need for them to commute between the site and the accommodation. So apart from that, if the site is not big enough, you cannot be HDBs, etc. Or it can even be a TOLQ. Then the next, I would like to touch on the requirements of segregation. So for segregation, what we have mentioned here is that segregation will be required if the workers are actually working on different activities. So the builder divide into different teams by the activity that they are doing. And between different teams of workers, they are to keep at least a minimum of 2 meters separation away from each other. So in order to, we have also done an example in the next slide, which will show how this can be done. So I'll carry you through from the dormitory itself, then to the worksite. So this is on the dormitory. So if you look at the slide here, there are 2 blocks within the accommodation. So how the workers on the floor. So if you're looking at Zone 1, Team A, they are basically cohorted within the same floor and in Block 1. Then for Team B, they are cohorted also in Block 1, but on Level 3. So they are cohorted minimally by floor for each team of workers and so on. And because they're cohorted by accommodations, this should be carried through to their communal shared facilities. So can be encouraged to have separate shared communal facilities like canteens and toilets. If that cannot be done, then we would actually encourage staggering of times for these facilities. So from here, you can see that how the different teams have staggered their lunch times. So this is carried through from the CTQs all the way to the worksite. So they have separate entry points and exit points. So it can be as simple as, like, if you look at the turnstile here, it's actually the same entry point, but you can just put a barricade to separate out between Team A and Team B. So Team A will only use this part of the access, whereas for Team B, they will use this part. And you can stagger the entry point. So it can be as simple as this. So just now I was mentioning about the accommodations. Then next we will look at the worksite itself to carry on segregation approach. Sorry, this, okay. Oops, too fast. Okay, so this is the work zone itself. So if you're looking at the different work zones, right, just now I've mentioned that they are staying in, they are segregated, they are cohorted by per floor and per block. So if you look at the activities that they are doing, each team is doing different activity. And just now we have mentioned, right, between different zones and different teams, there must be at least a 2 meters segregation distance between workers of different teams. So for the same team itself, MOM's baseline requirement of 1 meter will apply. Whereas between different teams, we require a minimum of 2 meters. So this is how it can be done at site. So what is the purpose of doing all this segregation? What we are trying to do is, this is basically the new normal. We're trying to build a bubble within the bubble. Just like at the start of the talk I mentioned, right? We share the same desired outcome, you and me. What we want is to bubble out the construction industry so that there will be a low risk to community spread. So if we bubble this out, the construction sector workers are basically separated from the community. So that's the first thing. The second thing we want to achieve is to ensure that there's no resurgence of infections at worksite. So how are we doing so? Okay, if you look at this team concept, right, just like I've explained on segregation by teams, why is it important to segregate them at accommodation and at worksite? Because we are trying to build a bubble within a bigger bubble. So what happens if there is one infected case for team A, for example? So this bubble in one is still contained within that semicircle of a bubble. So if you're looking at it, what we are trying to do is to contain the spread, to minimize the risk of resurgence, so that even if there is one infected case, it is only restricted to within the team itself. So by having this bubble within the bubble, what we are hoping to achieve is these two outcomes. So that is why the segregation approach for accommodation and at worksite is very important. Just now I've mentioned quite a bit of segregation. So in our guidelines, we have also mentioned like how this can be done very easily. It can be as easy as visual identifiers. So for example, for team A workers, you can be wearing like a red color shirt, just like netball players. You can be wearing a red color shirt for one team, whereas for another team, you can be wearing a green color shirt, or it can be a sticker on a helmet. So by doing so, just by visual identifiers, when the workers see that they are looking at, like, let's say another worker from another zone, they can easily identify that they have to keep a minimum of 2 meters away from the worker and not to enter their zone. So this is on segregation, and we've also mentioned quite a few key points here on how you can stagger all the communal share facilities, the timings, and the entry and exit points. So you can actually look through these in detail. The next thing that I'd like to touch on is how to reduce physical interaction at site. So I think this is very applicable for you, because basically you all will be made out of a group of specialist contractors and subcontractors. So on what we've done is we've given guidelines for different types of personnel. So for the management and administrative staff who generally only work within the site office, supervisors, RTOs, how they can carry out their site inspections. Then I think this part would be very pertinent to you, where for short-term workers, so for specialist contractors, there are different types. Some of them would go to site like just 1-2 hours a week, like the I&M contractors, testers, or even like vector control. So we have different requirements for them. For this group of workers, what we're recommending is for them to work, because they only go to site 1-2 hours a week. So we're recommending them to visit the site during off hours from the main group of workers, which means that if your main group of workers work from 9 to 6, then we would recommend that this group of specialist contractors would go to site before 9 a.m. or after 6 p.m. So for the next group of specialist contractors, that would include like your plumbing or even your lift and escalator specialist contractors that need to go to site once or twice a week. Then there are different requirements. So what we'll require for the specialist contractors to do would be that the workers have to be housed together, be cohorted the main contractor, but they can still be housed in a dedicated accommodation of the company, so of the same specialist contractor. So that is acceptable. But what we would specify is that for this group of specialist workers to only work within their designated zones as demarcated by the main builder. In addition, because these are specialist contractors that go to multiple sites, so we would require that during the carrying out works by this specialist contractor, you need to have SDO to supervise, to ensure that there is no mixing between the main group of workers and this group of specialist workers. So similarly, for the delivery logistic, we have also provided some of the guidelines on how this part is just the how to ensure cleanliness of workplace in general. So I won't elaborate on that. On the next slide is actually the last slide on the worksite documents. But this one I would like to share that part on, I'd like to share that part on suspected case and confirmed cases. So this is very important for all employers. So for all builders, evacuation plan in place if there is a suspected case, and a follow-up plan firm case. So this is very important, and not expeditiously to clinics for treatment, and to also separate the ill worker from the rest of the workers. So this is important for every worksite. So I'll go on to my last slide. I finished that part on the worksite documents. On this last slide, I would like to explain a bit on how we can leverage on digital technology to help. So this is, I've mentioned earlier on safe entry and trace together. The next thing is the health monitoring. So that so the employer will just need to click on a daily basis. On the last part, right, in order to ensure safe distancing measures, we would like to encourage the industry to use CCTVs at areas where, like, high volume areas where workers are likely to congregate, like canteens or rest areas. So with CCTV and video analytics, you can actually analyze when they're observed. So this is what we would like to encourage the industry to adopt as a self-monitoring way, rather than to have physical people monitoring at site. So we'd like to end the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian. Lastly, the third criteria will be covered by Mr. Eddie Wong, Senior Manager, Business Development Group, who will share with us on the desired outcomes and key requirements of COVID-safe accommodations and transportation criteria. Eddie, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Eddie from BCA. I'll take you through on safe accoms and safe transportation criteria for restart. As every one of us know, I think there are one too many outbreaks of COVID cases at the work site and where our workers live. And I think the last thing that everybody wants is to compromise the health and safety of our workers. And also, I think the last thing that everybody wants is to have an outbreak at the work site that causes works to come to a standstill. And this can range from maybe weeks to even months. So to avoid this situation, it's important that our contractors, when you restart works, that you comply and meet our restart criteria for safe accommodation and safe transport. And one of the, I think the key outcome that we want to achieve from our criteria when in formulating this criteria is to prevent the COVID cases from occurring among our construction workers at where they work and where they live. We also want to provide better and more livable accommodations for our construction workers, and effectively we want to cohort them and segregate them at the work site and also at where they live, so that we can avoid intermixing and prevent COVID-19 spread from one work team to another team, and also ensure that employers provide safe and sustainable transportation arrangement for all workers when they commute from where they live to the work site. This is to prevent any COVID-19 transmission to the public. So for contractors to restart, this is the criteria that they must meet for safe accom and safe transport. Basically, our contractors should comply with safe distancing measures. Our contractors should cohort and segregate their workers. Our contractors should appoint safe management officers, safe distancing officers, and COVID safe worker leaders. There should be tighter control of control exit points. There should be hygiene and good housekeeping. The welfare and well-being of workers are being well looked after, and our contractors should be vigilant to identify and isolate cases, and also our contractors should implement safe transport measures. So A, D, E, F, and G, these are tied and align very closely to MOM's guidelines on safe distancing measures. And what we are requiring our contractors to meet are actually B, cohorting and segregation of workers, the appointment of safe management officers, safe distancing officers, and COVID safe worker leaders, and also safe transport measures, so that you can meet this criteria and works can restart safely. So the key requirement to meet safe accommodation is for all employers and contractors to provide dedicated accommodations for all your workers. When I say your workers, these are your S-Pass and your work pass holders. So on the Y-axis, so basically these are the type of accommodations that most of our foreign workers live in: the purpose-built dorm, the factory converted dorm, the ancillary factory converted dorm, the CDQ, the TOLQ, and some of them also stay at the HDB and PRP. So on the x-axis, these are our type of workers. Broadly, we have classified them into type A. These are your workers working on project-specific sites. Basically, they are working on one construction site. Your type B, these are non-project specific construction workers. They can be working on multiple construction project sites. This can be your electricians and your plumbers. And type C, the construction account workers. Most of their works are actually carried out off-site and not on the construction site itself. This is where most of the leave, example leave contractors, and where most of you fall into. So I start off with type A. So for type A workers, if they are living in a purpose-built dorm or factory converted dorm, contractors should cohort by floor to only consist of workers to be deployed at one construction site, away from the type B and type C workers. So basically, if you are working on project 1, you should only be residing on one floor, and and project 2 workers should be residing on a separate floor. And the best solution is to have a CDQ and a TOLQ, where all the construction workers are actually cohorted onto the construction site where the CDQ and TOLQ belongs to. And if they are living in a HDB and PRP, they must ensure that they should only be cohorted with workers from the same project site, and no type B and type C workers are staying in the same HDB and PRP unit with them. So for the type B workers, if your workers are living in a PBD or a FCD, they shouldn't share the same floor as a type A and type C workers, and employers should segregate them into different rooms. If they are staying in an ancillary FCD, they should only be living with workers under the same employer, and again, they should be segregated into different rooms by projects. And if they are staying in the HDB and PRP, they should only consist of workers employed under the same employer, and ensure that no type A and type C workers are staying in the same unit. So for type C, the construction account workers, the lead specialists, where most of you fall into. So basically your workers, if they're living in a PBD and SCD, they shouldn't share the same floor as the type A and type B workers, and they should be segregated into different rooms by the employer. So if they are living in a factory converted dorm, again, they should only consist of workers employed under one employer and segregated into different rooms by projects. And I think for HDB and PRP, where most of your workers reside, they should only consist of workers employed under one employer. And the key thing is ensure that no type A and type B workers are staying in the same HDB and PRP unit. So in terms of criteria for safe transportation, this is based on MOM safe management measures for workers on employer-provided transportation. So employers should provide dedicated transport for your workers. This can include private buses, vans and lorries, and personal vehicles. And if they are living close enough to the site, MOM current position is they can cycle and walk to work. So for employer-provided vans and lorries to ferry the workers, there is a minimum clear floor space of about 0.5 square meters per passenger, which translates to a 25% reduction in maximum passenger capacity. So basically what this means is, if the lorry used to be able to ferry 10 persons, now the lorry can only ferry up to a maximum of about 7 persons. So the key rule of thumb is employers should provide point-to-point dedicated transport for all your workers. These are all your S-Pass and your work permit holders, and they shouldn't be taking any form of public transport. Under safe accom and safe transport criteria, you are also supposed to appoint safe management officers, SMOs, safe distancing officers, SDO, and COVID safe worker leaders, CSL roles, to work with the foreign workers to comply with safe distancing measures as stated in the safe accom guidelines. So the appointed SMO, SDO under the safe work site criteria can actually double up as the SMO and SDO. And also, there should at least be one COVID safe worker leader to be appointed per room if they are living in the CDQ, TOLQ, purpose-built dorm, FCD, or per unit if they are living in a HDB or PRP. So very broadly, the roles and responsibilities for SMO, they should coordinate and implement safe management measures. They should also conduct regular inspections of all accommodations. They should also review measures if there's constant non-compliance being detected. For safe distancing officer, their key role is to assist the SMO in conducting regular inspections and also carry out possible corrective actions while complying with the safe accom guidelines. For the COVID safe worker leader, his key role is to ensure that his teammates conduct daily temperature exercises twice a day, and also notify the employers and dorm operators of suspected COVID cases or if their roommate is feeling unwell. So basically, this is my last slide, and I'll hand you over back to the MC who will conduct the Q&A session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Eddie. Right now, we'll move on to the Q&A sessions. You may now raise your questions by clicking on the raise hand button or continue to post your questions via the Q&A button on your screen. Over to DCBC, Mr. Chin, please. Thank you.
Yes, I think before we take the Q&A, may I invite my fellow panelists, firstly, Thomas, to maybe say a few words on how you've been working with the industry and with BCA on the COVID. Thomas, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you, Mr. Chin, and all the others who joined this video conference today. Another thank to Mr. Chin again. Well, this inviting star member to your webinars, these panelists. We will try our best to address more on COVID safe to our restart of work. And afternoon again to all. My name is Thomas Ang, President of Specialist Trades Alliance of Singapore. As we all know, COVID has really affected all our industry. We are forced to learn how to restructure our sites operation in order to ensure the safety to all our workers. Since the circuit breaker started, together with SCAL, had many rounds of discussion with BCA, MOM, ESG, and a few ministers to provide our concerns and feedback on all the safe distancing measures that are to be implemented. We are also deeply appreciative of the support and funding of almost 100 billion from our government to help us stay on the job and let our business continue further in these outbreaks. Many of us may still face financial issues with the support, so STAR will continue to work with the authority for most. I urge all of us here to be strong and to be patient and look at the bigger picture. We need to control our cash flow carefully for the next few months. Although we are allowed to restart our work, progress may slow down easily by 50%, even more. This was indirectly injects many of our cash flow. Let's work with BCA and MOM to adopt the requirement to be the best of our ability so that all of us can restart smoothly and prevent another outbreak. STAR will also continue gather feedback from all our members and engage the authority on any further concerns throughout the restart processing. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Nelson, do you want to say a few words?
Thank you, Mr. Chin. Thank you, Mr. Chin, Mr. Teo, and Grace for organizing this restart webinar. I think it's very timely for all the staff members. And at the same time, I would like to thank Valerie, Vivian, Mei Ting, and Eddie for sharing your presentation. I think with this presentation, a lot of questions are answered through these presentations. Okay, to the staff members, thank you for attending this seminar. I can see that the seminar has gone up to about 1,003. I hope all stay put. Okay, with this, I'd like to let members of STAS know that STAS is working very closely with BCA, and BCA has actually providing an engagement platform for staff and the members, especially on the feedback, on the ground feedback, and we try to align and make sure the efforts are, the combined efforts are pulled together, and then try to address the challenging issues ahead. I'm sure in the short term we cannot answer every question in minutes or in hours, but definitely we are taking this very seriously and working very hard with our counterpart, okay, in BCA as well. And we also like to thank BCA for organizing seminars, okay, for SDO and SMO and SDO. But of course, I think due to the overwhelming response, I think the facility may need to ramp up a bit. I think that part will, maybe we can take it offline. That's all I need to add, Mr. Chin.
Okay, finally, President of SLECMA, James.
Yeah, this is James. First, I'd like to thank BCA and your staff for the support and assistance rendered to the SLECMA member. Next, I would like to share SLECMA experience. At the beginning stage, immediately after the Malaysia announced its MCO, I think some of our SLECMA members may be complaining about BCA staff are communicating by different means like email, WhatsApp, phone call, and etc. at the same time. And we do not know how to answer by which means. Also, they always start the communication at the evening or even at night on Saturday and a Sunday, asking for information and data to be submitted by today and the next morning and so on. But I think most of us had worked through the night of the 16th March, planning how to house our Venetian employee in Singapore. But by now, I think you must have realized how fortunate that we are being taken in good care and our maintenance operations could continue smoothly during the Venetian MCO and later during the Singapore circuit breaker period. With this experience, I'm confident that by working together with BCA, we will be able to restart our installation operation and eventually our total operation, gradually in phase, learning and improving to overcome the teething issue that hinder your productivity or efficiency as we move forward. Also, as you can see from just now the presentation, one key point is not to segregate your workforce for installation and maintenance. And most important of all, it will be a safe journey towards recovery and no second wave. With that, I thank you.
Okay, thank you, James. I see a lot of questions, and I think as Nelson said, we will not be able to answer in this webinar every question, but we will take this back and we'll put it into a Q&A for you. More importantly, this session focuses on specialist traits, right? And one of the specialist traits is lifts. And I can see most of your questions are with regard to workers, swabbing, and accommodation, right? So I'm going to invite a few of my colleagues to try to answer your questions, but give you an overall view of how we look at the requirements for your specialist traits, because you are a little bit unusual. You all are not specifically working in the worksite all the time. You go into the worksite and you come out, right? And you go to another worksite. And you also have maybe, like James' area of work, you have maintenance workers as well, and those that need to go into a construction worksite. So requirements are different. It's tighter for the worksite, and swabbing requirements are also different. Questions I see are also in relation to, hey, when can I get a queue for swabbing, right? I will ask Grace, who's looking after all the worker and swabbing issues, to give you an overview of what's our requirements and how you can get into this queue, I think most importantly. Then subsequently, I'm going to ask our colleague Chi Kiet, who's looking after accommodation. I think there were questions on accommodation cohorting, and also transport, right? You try to address some of your questions, and also how to start up a new CTQ. I think there was a question on that as well. And then finally, I'm going to ask Ohai to talk about lifts. I think it would apply to any specialist trade. How do we deal specifically with a specialist trade? How we look at the issues of how they move, and therefore how the requirements were formed, and it'll give you a better idea of what you really need to do. Okay, so I will ask Grace to start off. Grace, please.
Okay, thanks, Chairman. So ladies first, so I will take some of the questions first. Okay, I think it comes through quite clearly that many of you actually ask about if let's say in HQ, would the workers working in the HQ, do they need to get swabbed? The answer is no need. So if let's say purely they work in workers or your Singaporeans or your EP holders, they are working in your HQ office and do not go into the construction site at all, then they will not be required to undergo swabbing and regular swabbing. But if let's say they would need to frequently go to the construction site office, that is a separate matter, and that would still be subjected to swabbing. But also want to emphasize that we need to change, we are into a new normal, and we need to change the way that we work and to protect ourselves and to protect our family as well. That's why as much as possible, we leverage on some of the main cons worksite technology maybe to minimize, to have virtual meetings and things like that, so that, you know, like a platform like this, we can meet each other still together safely. Yeah, so okay, this is one point that I want to bring across. So number two is actually also about constructions. How do you get into the queue? I understand that many of you are actually specialist contractors. So if you are working in the worksite, construction worksite, right, actually you should put your workforce together with the main con in that project site and submit together. And then actually once we receive the submission, right, we will go through and we will also schedule. We'll look at the workforce that is in your company. If let's say they are from the dormitory, then their arrangement will be based on whether the workers are cleared from the dormitory and can come out to work. There's no point for you to actually submit a whole long list of workers, but yet many of them are still in the dormitories. So be sensible and submit the ones that actually likely they would be able to come out soon. And just also want to highlight that actually recently in MOM's website, they also put up a list of cleared dormitories for your reference. And also they have a projection of upcoming list of dormitories that may be cleared soon for your planning purpose. Then for those, I understand that you also have workers that is staying in the community, for example, the non-dormitory areas, for example, those HDB, private residential areas. For these workers, actually, if they are captured in the submission, we will also, they will need to, if they are working in a construction site, they need to undergo short test first, and we will make the arrangement with you by making an appointment with you. And there's also these 2 locations that we conduct this short test with the appointment time given, because we also want to spread out so that there won't be a large congregation together. So these 2 locations is actually Old Police Academy, and the other one is a floating platform. We work quite closely with HPB to stand up in over a short period of time since 2nd June to start arranging for all these swabbing arrangement. And we hope that you also keep to, if you are being assigned a timing, then keep to those timing, and try also not to go too early, because actually otherwise the workers will have to hang around for a very long time to wait for the schedule. So this is the few things that I would want to bring across. Yeah, I think there is also some questions about the access code. This access code is something that is relatively new, that is brought in by, that is put up by MOM. So right now, actually, if the workers' conditions, for example, the swab status, or they are not quarantined, they are not C+ cases, or they are from the clean dormitories, actually generally they will be green and they are allowed to work. But also be mindful that, I mean, like we do receive some of the feedback that, oh, there's a status that is gray, and if let's say the workers is already have been working during the circuit breaker period with BCA's approval, please continue to work, while in the meantime, within, as we mentioned in the advisory, that by 15 June, then we will have schedule you for the swabbing test. Yeah, that's all I have, Chairman.
So it's clear that if you are working in a work site, you will need to, or going to work in a work site, you will need to swab before you work. But if you are already doing essential works outside of the work site now, right, you can continue your work, right, and but you will need to be swabbed by the 15th of June. And therefore, you need to come in if you are already not a whitelisted firm. Okay, I think very important. Some of you are just, I think the last session we had, some were actually floating, don't know what to do. And you must come in and apply. Anyone who has a construction account worker, right, you are under construction, you will have to come in and apply, right? So we do need to know where you're working. And if you have workers that are, well, if you're an essential firm or you're a lift firm or you're an FM firm, your workers can continue to work once you have applied and gotten an approval, but they still need to be swabbed. Okay, so you need to join the queue. I think Grey Site is facilitating. Once you've come in with applications, we will contact you and we will arrange for your workers to be swabbed. Okay, so this is something that we're a little bit being proactive with. But the most important thing is you must make an application. I'm going to go to the next part, which is accommodation and transport. I'm going to invite my colleague Chike, last minute pulled in as a panelist, because there are a lot of accommodation questions. I think the clarity in accommodation, I think for essential works, you know you are going out to work, right? The part that is unclear is really, if I go into one work site, can I go to another work site and go on and so on and so forth? And if I'm doing that, do I mix with my same cohort of workers who may be working in different work sites? This will always be the questions in how you put up your accommodation. So I'm going to ask Chike to perhaps answer some of these questions.
Yeah, a very good afternoon, everyone. Try my best to answer some of the queries. But before I go on, I just want to reiterate the principles behind the safe accommodation. What we are trying to do is to actually minimize the intermixing between different groups of workers who are working on different sites as far as possible. So for this session, I guess it's most of you are the small contractors as well as specialist contractors. I will focus more on those smaller, those that are transient workers in nature, as well as those who are not working on construction sites. So my colleague just now, Eddie, has presented the type C type of workers. So those are the construction account workers who are not working on sites. I think what we want to see is to make sure that these workers are not mixed together with the other workers who are working on site. That's the first principle. So in other words, if you are staying in the dorms itself, we will have to make arrangements. You have to make arrangements with the dorm operators to segregate your workers away from the workers who are working from the construction sites, as well as ask your workers not to mix around with those who are working on the construction site itself. For those that are housed in the private residential or HDBs, I think that's okay. You just have to house together with your own employer. But I think within the household itself, as far as possible, segregate them into the teams, because I understand that you do have different teams visiting different sites, although they are non-construction sites. At least if one team is down, the other team is not. So that's what I will advise for those that are doing, they are not working on construction sites. For those that are working on construction site, but just for transient in nature, for example, specialist trades or trades that only need 2 or 3 hours a day, I think, again, the first principle, segregate your workers from those that are working mostly on site itself. When you go to site, please take the necessary precautions. In terms of housing itself, again, house yourself in teams within your own private residential or your HDB flats itself. you can house it as one employer. All your workers should just be housed together instead of mixing with other workers from other project teams. So I hope that is clear. So in terms of private transportation, MOM rule is that all public transport cannot be used for all the construction workers itself. So cycling and private bikes are okay. Yeah, walking is also okay. Yeah, but buses are not allowed. Okay, that's all I have.
Okay, so I think Chiket also mentioned if you go to work sites for a few days and you go off, the main contractor is really responsible to make sure that this group of people that just come in for a few days, for a short period, are segregated from the rest of the cohort in the work site, right? And they do have to get their safe distancing officer to pay attention that this group of workers are segregated, and preferably work in areas that do not come in contact with the rest of the people on site. I must say, it's difficult for you all because you're a small group. You come in and out of a place, but there is a big concern with the group of you all who are doing this work, because you are the potential spreaders, unfortunately, sorry, right? If there were cases in the site, there's a potential for you to carry it across sites. So you do have to, have to make sure that your workers are well segregated and safe distancing measures all the time. It is preventive, right? But the precautions need to be there. Although we note the difficulty for us to bubble wrap you, as what my colleague Vivian has said, right? Because you are really moving from site to site, and that's the nature of your job, right? And we have recognized this. I'm going to ask my colleague Orhai, before we take the questions, I'm going to ask my colleague Orhai to just talk a little bit about how we look at the lift sector, because it's the same with any facilities management company, right? You come into the site, the lift sector has maintenance people. The lift sector also has people doing construction work, right? That go to construction sites, right? How do we look at this mixing and this cohorting? And yeah, James, yes, we have frantically called you in the early days. I think we hope not to have to do that. We hope the situation stabilize. But I think everybody's trying to get more information and clarity, just like all the attendees here, right? The more information I have, the more clarity you have, the more we can facilitate some of these things that need to be done. So, Orhai, can I invite you to maybe take some of the questions?
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, James. Yeah.
Just to add on, that is how we build the trust out between SLECMA and BCA. Thank you.
Yeah, I must say that hi, this is Orhai from BCA. I must say that actually during this time, we have built trust between BCA and the L&E firms. And the L&E firms we are glad that L&E firms have been very responsive and cooperative throughout this period. Okay, I will just touch on the use L&E works, but I'll touch more on non-construction in a non-construction site, because construction site mainly is quite well is you follow the construction site rules. So if it's on a non-construction site situation, okay, as Chairman has just now mentioned, it is about work. Whether your workers are whom you deployed for the works are registered under the construction account. Okay, if they are construction account workers, then they have to be approved before they can start work. Okay, with one exception, and that is if these construction account workers, they were approved to work during the circuit breaker time. During the circuit breaker, we did approve a group of construction account workers for maintenance purpose and for upgrading works. So if they were approved to work during the circuit breaker, then they may continue to work now. until 15th of June, by when these workers must have obtained our approval to continue to work beyond 15 June. Okay, if the construction account workers were not approved to work during the circuit breaker period, then they must obtain our approval, okay, before they may start work. So how to get approval? We can actually refer to our FAQs in our recent advisory on restart. It actually details out what are the things that what are the requirements that you have to meet in order to get our approval. Okay. Another thing to highlight is that to minimize contact among workers, it is important that firms ensures business continuity and you implement separate teams so that you don't have one big team of workers are down and render your business and render your operation cannot continue. Okay. For construction sites, in the case of L&E, we also have very detailed. We have actually detailed out the requirements in our FAQs as to how you should be controlling the worker movements in a construction site when you do a new lift installation. Basically, the contractors mainly takes over the lift firms mainly takes over the lift shafts when it's almost complete. So we can actually allow subcontractors to go in, okay, to do certain works, and they must leave before another subcontractor goes in. So there are 3 areas in a lift shaft, lift motor room, and a lift pit, if I'm not wrong, that they can work concurrently. But in these 3 areas, at any one time, only one subcontractor or one contractor can be inside this area to carry out the work. Yeah, so that's about all. That's all I have on lift and escalator works. Yes.
Okay, I hope in giving a broader picture, it answers many of the questions that were asked. I would suggest, can we go to the hands, take in some call-in listeners. I think it's a long list growing. So,
hi, DCBC. Maybe you can start off with the very first person who raised their hand. Saturaman.
Before we start, I just want to say there are many hands here. I would like to limit you to 2 questions at most, okay? So that as many people as possible gets a chance. Okay, can we please?
Okay, first person, Saturaman. Do you mind if I think if I unmuted yourself, can start talking now? Thanks.
Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, thanks for arranging such a seminar. And okay, my questions are, first, people staying in HDB, mostly S-Pass holders, normally from different companies or different projects. In such case, if they have to relocate to another accommodation, it will take some time. So that's why, what is the grace period for them to look for an accommodation and change over? And second question is, if we reside, if you are residing in a family, both are construction S-Pass holders and from different projects, so can they allow to reside together, or still they have to relocate, change a new location or accommodation? That's all. Thanks.
Grace, do you want to take the question? Grace,
it's about.
Do you want to take the question?
I will take the question. I'll take the question. Yeah. Sorry for the first question, right? On the grace period, I would like to say that you should move them as soon as possible before you start work. So alternative accommodation, if you want to have a dedicated one, you can move them to hotels or things like that. Yeah, places like that, so that you don't intermix with the other workers who are staying in the, or even S-Pass holders who are working on the different construction sites. So can I just check your second question again, because I was breaking up, I couldn't hear you clearly. What's the second question?
My second question is something like a family. If we are residing together with the family, like a husband and wife working in a construction field, but
Yeah.
they both having different projects. So can they allowed to reside together?
Okay. For that, right? I don't want to be breaking up families. Take the necessary precaution. Stay within that. Segregate yourself. Yeah. So even for some of us who have to visit sites, we do the same thing as well. So do take care of your family. Yeah.
Okay.
So they don't have to move out. Continue to stay there, but take the necessary precautions within the household for those family members.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. Sorry, can I ask you one more question? Last question.
Chairman, Ken.
I think we need to control this. We'll take your questions through your written questions. To be fair to the rest, we don't have much time, so I would ask Kenway to move on.
Yeah, hi, Setu Rahman. Yeah, we'll move on to the next person, please. Nick, next one is Nick. Do you mind if you unmute yourself from your end? Thank you.
Hello. Yeah, hi. Okay, my question actually is, we are actually an electrical specialist contractor. So we have to go to different construction sites for our projects. And presently our workers are actually housed together in one PBD, and they need to work at different job sites because of the different construction schedules. So as a specialist contractor, I think you guys have put in the terms that the works usually take not more than 1 or 2 days per week. But because due to the nature of the project site, sometimes it may take more than 1 to 2 days. So when I submit the application, will they actually be able to waive this requirement? That's my question.
You mean waive the requirement for the dedicated accommodation, is that? Or
no, as in 1 to 2 days per week, because this 1 to 2 days per week is very hard to actually maintain it because of the situation now. There could be delays in terms of the project. So for us to just stick to 1 to 2 days, because like for instance, they take the example, I think which they actually cite was that building like adding doors in certain job sites. So if it's just 1 or 2 doors in a small job site, is fine. But if you're doing for a big building, we're talking about, let's say, like 100 to 200 doors, then you can't possibly be spending only 1 to 2 days per week to actually install doors. So take back to the example right now is, in my case as an electrical specialist contractor, so let's say my shutdown works will require the period of more than 1 to 2 days per week. I can't possibly be asking the user actually to shut down their systems 1 to 2 days per week as well. So it could take longer. So that's my question actually. In this case, how do actually will my application be considered of this requirement?
Let us check back on this. I don't think it's a hard-coded requirement. That it's just an indicative that it's 1 to 2 days a week. But your job, Nick, you go down there few days and then you move on to another site. And
yes.
Do you come back again?
Yes, I will have to come back again because let's say if my job at a certain phase where the builder has to come in to do, or perhaps another specialist has to come in to do, then so that will require me to come back as well.
So we do recognize that there are many of this we call close to FM related, right? Or lifts, They come in, they do a bit of work, they go out, they come in, they do a bit of work, they go out. The main con is supposed to have some controls at the site. Make sure that you guys, as I said before, you guys don't mix with the main cohort. And the main con is supposed to segregate some of this.
Okay, so if my works were to exceed 1 to 2 days, is it acceptable?
I don't think it's a hard-coded thing, but we'll put it clearly in the Q&A. All right? Okay, let's move on.
Thank you.
Cosmas.
Hi, Cosmas. Hi, Cosmas. Do you mind if you unmute yourself?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hi. My name is Cosmas. I'm working with the lift contractor. So I have 2 questions. The first one, for the Type C accommodation. So are the lift technicians allowed to share the units even though they work at different sites? And are they allowed to stay with the other workers who hold different paths? Like for example, manufacturing pass?
Okay, so again, it's back to the question on accommodation. The principle, like I say, there must not be any other people working on any other construction site within that unit itself. So your second question, if they're holding manufacturing pass, it's okay. They can continue to stay together because they're not working on, there's no other people working on another construction site. So for the other part, right, we actually say that you can house all the co-workers working for the same employer together under one household. So that's fine. But segregate them into teams because I presume that they will also still be working in teams, right? So it's good that they segregate into teams according to where they function on site as well, so as to further limit the spread, the risk of spread.
Okay, so my next questions regarding the transport.
Sorry, can I just add?
Yeah, okay.
I think in our FAQ for lift and escalators, we also mentioned as much as possible if you are the installation workers and the maintenance workers, they should not be mixed lah. As far as you can, try not to mix them together because they are doing two different kinds of work, and you will need the maintenance workers to continue to work when the lift is operating. Okay.
Okay. So my next question regarding the transport. So typically we have typically we deploy about 1-2 testers in each project. So we have multiple projects. So in this case, the transport is going to be a challenge. So the question is that can we send our workers to few different sites in the same company bus while we observe the safe distancing?
So, okay. So it's lift and escalator, right? I think that's okay as long as the what do you call it? The employer arrange a dedicated transport, so you can drop them off at different sites along the way.
Okay, thank you. Can we take the next question, Candy?
Hi, Candy. Do you mind if you unmute yourself from your end, please? Thanks.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm thinking if we are supposed to take the swab test by 15 June 2020, what if we are in essential service and we were not being contacted to take the swab test, which means that we are not allocated a slot by that time? What will happen?
Can I ask Candice, Grace here, have you made the submission already?
Yes, we have.
So we will actually make the arrangement for you.
Because we are starting to panic because from now to 15 June is another 11 days more, and then we hear no news and no emails and nothing, and there's no so-called email confirmation from your side. So we are a bit panicked. That same goes to all my industrial friends as well.
When did you submit? Candy, can I ask when did you submit?
3 days ago.
Oh, all right. Grace will take care of you.
Okay, we'll come back to you.
Okay. Can we move? Candy, do you have another question?
I would like to check if we were not being allocated a slot, should we still go to work or we have to stop all the work by 15 June?
We should let you know. Okay. All right.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sylvia.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. We move on to the next person, Sylvia Ong. Do you mind if you unmute yourself? Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you. We are small contractors and we support a lot of facilities management team. Now, I understand the objective to segregate the workers in their accommodations, but currently it is really too expensive for us to pool the workers and house them in hotels. We can house them into rooms, but currently if they are non-Malaysian workers, work permit and S-Pass holders, I cannot house them in HDB flats. Will there be any way the government can allow us to house our workers in HDB flats? You know what I mean? If Malaysian workers, they can stay in HDB flats. So now we are making arrangements to pool them from their respective rental. They have to break their leases and their tenancies, and we will have to look for alternative HDB flats to, to rent it and to house our workers. But if they are Bangladeshi, Indian workers, I cannot rent a HDB flat to house them.
Private properties?
It's too expensive. We are a very small contractor. It will really kill us. COVID don't kill us. All these overheads will kill us.
I think these are some of the arrangements that you would have to consider. Yeah. There's also a range of private properties arrangement. I mean, like locations or yeah. Chairman?
Yeah. Unfortunately, this is a new norm. We also cannot afford for everybody to be not practicing some of this safe distancing or cohorting, and it puts many more people and many more parts of the industry at risk.
So in other words, my other alternative is to appeal to the dormitory operators to house my workers in one room separate from your construction site workers, right? That's one alternative. Second question is to Grace. You said that I need to apply for my QS or my office staff to work in the office under safe distancing if work from home is not possible. Do I then apply separately to MTI for my office staff, separate from applications to BCA for my site?
Okay, so you are talking about your HQ personnel, right? Accounts, clerical or staff. Right. Yeah. Okay. So this one actually is mentioned in our advisory. So there's a link that you can refer to and put the submission.
So that is under MTI.
Yes.
Right. So there'll be two applications because we are construction sector, right? So I will have to apply to MTI for office staff and then apply to BCA for site works.
Actually, you use the link that will help you, because I think because your form actually is under SSIC and SSIC code, but yours is not under construction, is it?
It's under more on renovations.
Renovation is under 4143, which is construction.
You can come to BCA, but you must come.
Yes.
Yeah. We have to apply for both, like MTI and BCA.
Actually, there's one link in the advisory. Actually, even if you submit through the MTI, right, they will also channel it seamlessly into our BCA
you apply to BCA.
Thank you.
All right. Can we move on?
Okay, we move on to the next person, Julia. Hi, Julia. Do you mind if you unmute yourself?
Hi. I'd like to ask how do you propose we restrict what the workers do and where they go on their off days?
Sorry, can you elaborate your question? Yeah.
My first question is, how do you propose that we restrict what the workers do and where they go on their off days? And the second question is that if
on their off days, is it?
Yes.
Okay.
And the second question is, we have a fabrication yard and it's not a construction site. So what are the restrictions and the applications that we need to do so that our workers can start working there?
Okay, maybe Chairman, I address the first question first. Okay, on the off days, right, depends on whether your workers are they in the dormitories. If let's say in the dormitories, right, actually MOM would have has earlier already sent out a circular to talk about the off days arrangement, because there's still off day restriction during even in this period, and the workers are only allowed to go out for work until further notice from MOM. So actually in the dormitories is already taken care of. If let's say your workers is actually in the community, for example, they are working in, they are staying in the HDB or private properties or this sort, then in that case, actually, you can advise, they are like you and me, but we do, just like you and me also, that we will try to stay home as much as we can and not to go out unnecessarily. So it's the same principles that applies. I hope that answers your questions. Yeah, even in the dormitories, actually, there's also access code for them to come out.
Hey, Julia, I would say it's in your interest to keep your worker safe and clean. Because if your worker is not safe and clean, then cannot work, right? And there's a potential of infection, right, across, and you don't want that. So it's in your interest to make sure that your worker is safe, right? If can, don't go out there and mix, okay? You asked about your fabrication yard. What do you do?
Basically, what we are doing is steel fabrication, metal fabrication. So it's not considered a construction site. So what do we need to apply for to get our workers to work there? Do we apply to BCA? Do we apply to MPI? Do we apply, because we can't apply for a construction permit, right? Because it's not there.
You see, you are actually not, I'm not so sure, you support the construction industry, but you are using construction workers. So for BC, I've said this, and I think Ohai has said this, and Grace has said this. If you have construction account workers, you need to come to us. You have to come into an appeal channel, Julia. Okay?
Chairman,
we have a channel for appeal. Yeah.
Yeah. Because for fabrication yards, like steel fabrication yards and precast yards, right, they're taken as supply works. So all the 3 COVID-safe requirements apply. So as what Chairman has said, you just need to submit into the appeal channel. And we will look at all the 3 criteria because they are construction workers, basically. So all 3 criteria will be applicable. Does that reply your question?
I think, yeah.
So what would the turnaround?
So I think we will have to look at your appeal first, okay? And whether you meet the 3 criteria. Okay. I think many of you all will be in this state. Many of you who are in this webinar, you actually not quite doing construction work per se, not on the site, but you are in the peripherals. Some of you actually not construction, but you have taken construction account workers, right? So you do need to come in. You need to come in to get approval, right? And if you go into the applications and you don't see that you fall under any of these baskets, right, or buckets, then you will have to make an appeal to us, and we will look at your case. Okay, that's all I can say. Now let's move on.
Chairperson, we are about 10 minutes into past 5:30, so we'll maybe
take the
last questions from the last person.
Last 3 questions. Yeah. Let's do the last 3 questions. Since there are so many hands, let's do the last 3 questions.
Okay, last 3 questions. So
but 1 question each. Sorry.
1 question each. So Wei Kang, do you mind if I unmute yourself? Thanks.
Yeah, hi. I'd like to ask because we deal with installation of CCTV and other alarm systems also. So throughout the entire circuit breaker period, the restart criteria for building and construction is very well and extensively communicated to contractors. But I'd like to ask, for the industry of CCTV, how can we move forward? And also, you have mentioned just now that our workers are construction account workers. So how do we apply with this? Because we cannot keep doing the MTI unlimited exemption application.
Can I invite Ken Singh? You want to say anything? CCTV. Can consider FM or not?
Maybe just to, can you hear me? Ken Singh here.
Yes, yes.
CCTV as in new installation or servicing for existing buildings?
Either, both. I have both. Yeah.
So you are using construction account workers for all these services and installation?
I mean, their manual or their work permit is top construction. I mean, so yeah.
Construction worker, you are.
Okay, so currently where are they residing, if I may ask also? Are they out of the dorms? Are they residing in the PRPs or HDB kind of residence?
My team leader is a S-Pass holder and he's staying in a private estate.
Yeah.
My workers are staying in the PBDs. the PBD they are staying in is created to be a COVID-free zone in the coming weeks, thankfully. But the more pressing issue is my team leader, who is an S-Pass holder, can he continue with such work?
Yeah, so if it's an S-Pass, he will be deemed to be a construction account worker, and I think the requirements on COVID safe will apply to him. The other thing that you have to take note of is that because this is, are you deemed essential service during the circuit breaker? Do you manage to get MTI's approval?
Initially, yes, but they revoked.
They revoked?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So now that you will have to go through our channel for the construction account workers to get the clearance from BCA, because you have a construction account workers. If you have used services account workers, you wouldn't have to go through this step.
So I have to go to the link to apply for construction account works to be approved.
Yeah, for the worker to be cleared by us, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
It'll
I
be
hope that answered the question. Yeah.
It'll be under a tier 2, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh. And if you can't, you got to send in an appeal to us.
What about a normal site visit? Is it okay?
What do you mean?
Like existing customers, let's say the CCTV is down and then I need him to go there.
You need approval if you are using
the worker.
Work pass and S-Pass.
Okay.
It's very clear. You cannot go on work.
Actually, maybe one note is, I'm not sure whether you have other accounts worker.
You need,
I do not.
All construction workers.
You need to get approval. We have to move on. I think a couple more waiting in the queue. So you do have to come to apply to us.
All right. Thanks.
Okay. The next person in the line, Dominic Tay. Yeah. Do you mind if you unmute yourself? Hi, Dominic. Can you unmute yourself?
Hi. Thank you for the time. I would like, I'm contractor from instrumentation and monitoring. So I would like to ask, because we are earlier permitted activities, but our workers are housed in factory converted dorm. And this dorm is still not cleared by MOM yet. So from now until 15th of June, can they leave the dorm and carry out their earlier permitted activities?
Answer is no.
Okay.
They couldn't even come to the dorm.
But they already completed their swab test and the result is negative. So they also cannot leave the dorm.
You will take in, actually I think the dorm will keep you updated, and you can also check at the dorm's access code whether they could come out or not.
Okay. In that case, we got really no workers to do the essential works. Yeah.
So just to give this clarity, Grace, you correct me if I'm wrong. Huh?
Yeah.
To give this clarity, so if you are a renovation worker, lift worker, or firm, right, and you have workers that are staying in the HDB or the PRP, right, they can start to work, right, but they must be swabbed within a time period. Yes. And once you apply, we will take this list of workers that are not swabbed yet, and we will tell you all when to swab, but they can work first. Only if they are in HDB PRP, private residential properties. But if they are in factory converted dorms or PPDs or whatever, they have to be clean. The dorms have to be clean. If MOM has not given the all clear, then you can't bring out any workers. They won't let you bring it out anyway. Right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
For BCA to approve.
Because some of the client is also very confusing. They keep emphasizing saying that BCA is allowed you to work until 15th of June. Yeah.
So the clarity is that if they live outside of the dorms, where everyone controls the dorms, basically. Okay.
Okay. Sure.
But if they're outside of the dorms and they can work if they are in renovation or in some of the facilities management. And this group of specialist people that we are meeting now, okay. But everyone needs an approval from BCA to work. Okay, you cannot work without approval. For those essential firms that we have approved previously, you've got until 15 to get your workers swabbed, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Okay.
Last question from Kok Ling. Okay, Kok Ling. I thought Kok Ling no need to ask, right? Is it the same Kok Ling? Okay, please.
Can you hear me? Yes, okay. Yeah. I have one question now with regard to this dedicated transport. So from my earlier understanding is that those workers living in this HDB or PRP does not can take public transport. So today's presentation slide, I think there's some difference. So can I clarify this again?
No, all construction account workers, all construction work permit holders, basically we have implemented a more stringent criteria that they must all take dedicated transport lah.
Oh, because okay, we operate in pockets of 2 or 3 testers at the various sites. So morning he can be going to one site to do adjustment. Afternoon he have to go to another site to attend the RI inspection. Then worst case, then there may be a handover inspection to the town council in another site. Could be nearby. So they are moving around. So from the 28th of May engagement, so I understand that BCA somehow relaxed this and allow them to take public transport. So I worry there are some miscommunication here.
This is specifically for the lift sector.
Yes, especially straight lift and escalator. Yes.
The current requirement is that they cannot take public transport. We take your feedback. We'll have a look at your I think Ohai maybe can look at whether this problem is solvable. Okay? But at the moment, no public transport. Yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So can I have another question? This is a appeal. Actually, looking at the situation, our specialist trade worker in the future, we hope we can stay in the HDB rental units. So to avoid this dormitory issue after the saga is over. That's my appeal. Because currently construction workers, they are not allowed to rent the HDB unit. So that's an appeal for consideration.
Okay, noted. It's been almost close to 6 o'clock already. So I would have to close the webinar here. I thank firstly all the attendees and for your patience. We will, I think as mentioned by the host, I want to mention it again. If you log out, you have to fill in a form and you will get all the seminar materials. Okay. Secondly, all your questions, we will try to put it into an FAQ for you. Right. Leaves me to thank our panelists and my fellow colleagues for joining me in this webinar. Thanks, Thomas, Nelson, and James. Thank you all. So with this, I close the webinar.
Okay, thank you, webinar chairperson,
Thank you.
panelists, and speakers for the valuable insights about the COVID safe restart policies, considerations, and processes. It has been a very fruitful session. We have come to the end of the session. After exiting this webinar, you'll be directed to assess an evaluation form for today's session. Once submitted, you'll be able to download the speaker's presentation materials. Thank you to all participants as well as you have made the webinar a success. Stay well, be safe. This is Kenway from BC Academy. Thank you for attending. Thank you.